12-year-old starved to death, the horror inside a laundry basket. Before we dive in, kindly hit the subscribe button and let us know where you are watching from in the comment. She was small, with bright eyes and a smile that could light any room. Jacqueline Mimi Torres-Garcia was a child full of promise. Always kind, always gentle, often singing, often playing. Her family called her Mimi. To her friends, she seemed like any other girl. But behind closed doors, something was very wrong. In Connecticut, authorities say Mimi died in the fall of 2024. She was only 11 or 12, reports differ, but her fate was horrifying. Her body wasn't discovered until October 8, 2025, hidden away in a large plastic bin behind an abandoned building in New Britain. News Times. The discovery shocked the community and the nation. When the container was opened, investigators found her in a plastic bag, wrapped in a comforter and old sheets, curled tightly in a fetal position. She had been starved, restrained, and forgotten. The autopsy would confirm what no one wanted to admit. She died of fatal child abuse by starvation. CT Insider. Mimi's disappearance, or presumed disappearance, flew under the radar for months. She was reportedly homeschooled, and her mother, Carla Garcia, claimed she was living out of state part of the time. CT Insider, that distance helped hide the truth. Officially, Mimi wasn't on school rosters. She went quiet. In fact, state investigators later found out that in January 2025, the Department of Children and Families, DCF, attempted a welfare check. But things didn't add up. The girl in the video call wasn't actually Mimi. CT Insider, according to a timeline unsealed by police, Carla Garcia presented another child on the call, pretending it was Jacqueline. CT Insider, the deception fooled DCF. The case was closed. Meanwhile, Mimi's mother, her aunt, and her mother's boyfriend allegedly tortured her, locked her in zip ties, and tormented her body with neglect. Crime Online. According to court documents, Garcia later admitted they withheld food from her for about 2 weeks before her death. CT Mirror. When investigators finally found her remains, the medical examiner's report was chilling. She weighed around 26 to 27 pounds. Her skin was described as glued to the bones, a stark sign of extreme malnutrition. Law and Crime. There were no signs of blunt force trauma, no major injuries that would have caused her death. Her body, the coroner concluded, didn't show signs of breakdown from decomposition. She died from prolonged starvation, not just from neglect. News Times. The coroner officially ruled it a homicide. CT Insider. How did no one notice? That's the question everyone asked. Mimi's mother, Carla Garcia, is now facing serious charges: murder, child cruelty, even murder with special circumstances. Her boyfriend, Jonathan Jojo Nanita, is also charged. CT Insider, her aunt, Jacqueline Garcia, is accused of abuse and restraint. CT Mirror. Court documents reveal that after Mimi died, her body was hidden in the family's basement. Law and Crime. When they moved in March 2025, they allegedly transported her remains with them in that same storage tote. News Times. Later, Nanita is accused of dumping the container behind an abandoned house in New Britain. CT Insider. According to warrants, zip ties were found in the home. Restraints, torture. The abuse was likely long-term. CT Mirror. Neighbors and local officials now wonder, how many times were there warning signs? Before she died, Mimi had been withdrawn from public school. News Times. Her mother cited homeschooling, but by pulling her out, Mimi slipped through the cracks. There weren't school teachers or daily classmates to notice her decline. When DCF workers tried to check up on her, the family lied. They used a different child in a wellness Zoom call. CT Insider. That level of deception stunned caseworkers. It allowed Mimi's suffering to remain invisible until her remains were found in a bin. Police also revealed that on more than one occasion, Mimi was restrained with zip ties inside the home. CT Mirror. It wasn't a simple neglect case. It was systematic, controlled abuse. Mimi's grandfather, Felix Osorio, remembers her as joyous, "She was everything to me," he said. Boston.com. He carried her in his arms. He told friends she hummed while doing chores. She loved drawing. She loved her family, at least the part that the public saw. When the news broke, Osorio and Mimi's father expressed heartbreak and confusion. How could a child so full of life vanish? How could she be treated this way and no one know? On October 12, 2025, things shifted. Carla Garcia, Mimi's mother, was arrested. People. She was charged with murder with special circumstances, child cruelty, and conspiracy. People. Nanita, the mother's boyfriend, was also arrested, along with Jacqueline Garcia, Mimi's aunt. CT Mirror. Investigators say the three conspired, abused her, and covered her death. AP News. The discovery of her body forced the legal system to confront a hideous crime disguised by secrecy and lies. When the bin was opened and her body found, the shock rippled across Connecticut. This wasn't just a crime. It was a betrayal. Neighbors whispered. Officials faced questions. Advocates demanded reform. How did DCF miss signs? How did the homeschooling claim allow her disappearance? How long did the cruelty last? And how many people knew? Now there's a push for answers, for accountability, for justice. Mimi's case is not just tragic. It's a warning. It exposes how isolation, homeschooling, can hide abuse. It shows the vulnerability of children when systems fail. It raises the stakes on how child welfare agencies monitor homes. It forces the question, who protects a child when the people she should trust are her abusers? The horror inside that laundry basket was real, and it's not over. Investigators are digging deeper. Charges may increase. Court battles are looming. People are watching. The public is demanding reform. But Mimi is gone. She can't speak. She can't tell her story. So we must. We will. In the next chapter, we'll go deeper into how the abuse escalated, how investigators uncovered the neglect, and how the family allegedly hid her body, moving it quietly, callously, to a new home. They say starvation is a slow, cruel way to die. It drains the body. It hollows the bones. It leaves a person empty. But in this case, the worst part was not just the starvation. It was how secret it was. How the horror was kept inside walls, inside a home. Authorities now allege that Mimi Torres-Garcia's final days were marked by years of neglect, restraint, and abuse. It was not an accident. It was a slow, deliberate cruelty, hidden from nearly everyone. According to arrest warrants, Mimi was frequently restrained by the very people who were supposed to protect her, her mother and her mother's boyfriend. They allegedly used zip ties, not occasionally, often. CT Insider, her mother, Carla Garcia, admitted to police that she and Jonathan Jojo Nanita used the ties when Mimi was acting bad. The hour. Why? The documents say her disobedience might have been the excuse. But in truth, those zip ties were tools of control, restraint, power. One witness, her aunt, told investigators that Nanita physically beat Mimi, and that when she wet or soiled herself while restrained, she was punished. CT Insider, it's grotesque. A child, tied, shamed, dehumanized. It wasn't discipline. It was torture, perhaps the most chilling allegation in the warrants. Mimi was denied food for 2 weeks before she died. The hour, her mother is said to have confessed to that horrifying fact. The hour, the 2-week starvation was not by accident. According to the warrants, the parents stopped feeding her. They knew what they were doing. That time frame matters. 2 weeks of limited or no nutrition can cripple a child's body. The weight drops, the muscle wastes, the mind falters. By the time she died, according to medical examiners, she had lost so much weight that her skin was glued to the bones. CT Insider. Her malnourishment wasn't mild or short-term. Investigators say it was prolonged, that she suffered significant visible decline. While the abuse was happening, several warning signs showed up, but the system failed Mimi. Neighbors called police. According to warrants, on December 29, 2024, people living near her family's home said they heard someone scream and something heavy fall. CT Insider. One neighbor smelled bleach. a common tool used to hide odors or clean up messes. CT Insider. But when officers responded, the family answered the door and seemed frustrated, not frantic. The neighbor later said a woman, believed to be Carla, told them she was pregnant and simply frustrated. CT Insider. Later, the Department of Children and Families, DCF, tried to check on Mimi. In January, they set up a wellness video call. But something was deeply wrong. The girl on that call was not her. According to court documents, the family presented a different child posing as Mimi during the video check. The hour, that deception revealed a breathtaking willingness to lie to protect a secret. Even more chilling, DCF later said they did not have reports that Mimi was being physically abused or starved. CT Public. According to them, previous reports did not directly accuse her of that kind of harm. CT Public. So a child in danger slipped through oversight. According to police, Mimi likely died in fall 2024, while the family lived in Farmington. AP News. Her home, her life, everything kept hidden. Her death unreported. Not a missing persons case. Nothing public. But in March 2025, her family moved. Authorities now say that they packed Mimi's remains in that same plastic tote and brought them along. CT Insider. Her body stayed with them. No alarm raised. No missing child alerts issued. Later, Nanita allegedly drove the container to an abandoned home on Clark Street in New Britain, where it was dumped. The hour, the bin was discovered there behind the building in October 2025 after someone tipped off the police. WFSB. The horror traveled with them, quietly, secretly, tucked away in a rented tote, hidden from the world. When the container was finally opened, medical examiners got to work. Their report would shock the public. Dr. James Gill, from the Connecticut Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, determined cause of death was fatal child abuse with starvation. CT Post. The manner of death, homicide. CT Insider. There were no signs of major trauma, no blunt force injuries, no broken bones. CT Post. This was not a crash. It was not an accident. It was starvation. CT Post. The remains showed severe and prolonged malnourishment. The hour. Even more disturbing, the body was folded in fetal position, tucked into the tote. The hour. Medical experts said they saw structures in her body consistent with extreme emaciation, not decomposition. The hour. Investigators also noted a white, powdery substance on parts of her remains, which they believed might have been used to mask odor or preserve the body after death. The hour. This was not an afterthought. It was part of the cover-up. Court documents also expose what they thought of Mimi. Carla Garcia allegedly told police that she and Nanita starved Mimi because she was bad. She didn't obey. The Washington Post. She said Mimi had behaviors they didn't like. According to warrants, they claimed she misbehaved, didn't listen, and didn't respect them. AP News. But the family's narrative shifted. In some interviews, Carla blamed Nanita for the worst of the abuse. In others, Nanita blamed her. CT Insider. Her aunt, Jacqueline Garcia, admitted she witnessed much of the abuse. According to warrants, she saw the zip ties. She saw Mimi starved. She heard the cruelty, but she didn't report it. The hour. Even more heartbreakingly, some of the restraint and neglect seemed to be punishment for behavior that was deeply normal for a child, at least according to the abusers. AP News. Sexual, emotional, or violent blame was never publicly admitted. Instead, they framed abuse as discipline. Some neighbors now say they remember odd things: cries, smells, chaos. CT Insider. On more than one night in 2024, someone screamed. Something fell. But despite those red flags, no one put it all together. CT Insider. A local activist and a few concerned citizens have asked how DCF missed this. How the video check was faked. How no one in the neighborhood reported a missing child for almost a year. CT Public. Local leaders are now calling for accountability. They want answers. They want reform. If a 12-year-old girl can quietly disappear and be hidden for months, something is terribly broken in the system. One of the most troubling details. Mimi was pulled from public school. CT Post, after 5th grade, her mother told educators she would homeschool her. CT Post, that decision gave them cover. No daily school attendance, no teacher noticing the weight drop, no classmates asking where she was. Investigation of the case has prompted some to question policies around homeschool oversight. How often should welfare agencies check in? How do you verify genuine homeschooling versus abusive isolation? The stakes just got real. Lawmakers, following the news, are already debating whether to change how child welfare investigates homeschooling families after a tragedy like this. The 2-week starvation is especially brutal because it's relatively short but deeply effective. For a child's body, it's a catastrophe. Investigators believe that during those final days, Mimi had been locked, silenced, starved, unable to cry out, to eat, or to run. Whether she understood her death was coming is unknown. But she was alive. Someone held her life in their hands, then slowly let it slip. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. By now, the investigation has turned from tragedy into horror. The details emerging are so twisted they feel unreal. But this is not fiction. This is what allegedly happened to Jacqueline Mimi Torres-Garcia, and how her own family covered their tracks. In the search warrants filed by Connecticut investigators, a chilling truth stands out. Mimi's mother admitted she stopped feeding her in the weeks before her death. CT Post, according to the warrant, her mother, Carla Garcia, confessed that she, along with her partner Jonathan Nanita, withheld food from their daughter for about 2 weeks before she died. WFSB. This was not neglect. It was deliberate. In their own words, they didn't just forget to feed her, they chose not to. The excuse? Carla said it was punishment for Mimi acting bad. The hour that punishment would prove fatal. During the same interviews, Carla admitted she had restrained Mimi with zip ties when she believed the child misbehaved. The hour, according to her, Nanita encouraged or directed much of this abuse. She described tying her daughter as a form of correction. The hour, but the warrants reveal that this control was far more sinister than discipline. The cover-up was elaborate. After Mimi died, which Carla allegedly admitted happened on September 19, 2024, she and Nanita did not report her missing. WFSB. Instead, they allegedly hid her body in the basement of their Farmington home. CT Insider. The scent, according to documents, became impossible to mask. Carla told police the odor from the decaying body was so strong that they had to leave their apartment, moving between hotels and friends' homes to escape it. CT Post. Then, in March 2025, the family relocated to New Britain, bringing Mimi's remains with them in a plastic storage tote. CT Post. They carried her in a container, hidden among their belongings, like luggage. According to warrants, they wrapped her in a comforter and old sheets. The hour, the tote traveled with them. It was hidden, concealed, but never buried, until an anonymous tip in October led police to the abandoned house at 80 Clark Street in New Britain. The hour there, they found the bin. Inside, her body. One of the most horrifying parts is how the family misled authorities. In January 2025, Connecticut's Department of Children and Families, DCF, attempted a check on Mimi. The hour, but instead of Mimi, Carla allegedly put forward a different child in a video call, pretending she was Jacqueline. The hour, according to court documents, the child on the screen was not Mimi at all. The hour, this wasn't a minor detail. It was a calculated, brazen act, a deception used to evade suspicion and cover their tracks. A young life erased, replaced, hidden. When DCF later learned the truth, they launched a review of how they handled the case. How did a child in obvious danger slip through their system? CT Insider. People began demanding answers. How did social services not see the signs? The Office of the Chief Medical Examiner delivered a damning report. Dr. James Gill officially ruled Mimi's cause of death as fatal child abuse with starvation. The manner of death, homicide. CT Post. There were no signs of fatal trauma, no fractures or blunt force injury. CT Post. Instead, Her body showed severe and prolonged malnourishment. The hour, her weight was shockingly low, around 26 to 27 pounds, according to investigators. NBC Connecticut. She was emaciated, her skin tight over protruding bones. Even more haunting, the forensic report noted a white, powdery substance on her remains. The hour, investigators suspect it may have been used to mask odor or preserve the body post-mortem. A sign she was hidden with chilling intent, not left to nature. The hour, the way her body was folded in the tote, curled up in a fetal position, suggested she was placed there deliberately, not dumped in haste. The hour, everything about her final resting place spoke of control, of secrecy. As the investigation unfolded, 3 people were arrested and charged. NBC Connecticut. Mimi's mother, Carla Garcia, her mother's former boyfriend, Jonathan Jojo Nanita, and her aunt, Jacqueline Garcia. NBC Connecticut. Carla Garcia faces the most serious charges: murder with special circumstances, conspiracy to commit murder, child cruelty, unlawful restraint, tampering with evidence, and improper disposal of a body. NBC Connecticut. Nanita is charged with similar crimes: murder, tampering, and cruelty. NBC Jacqueline Garcia, Mimi's aunt, is charged with intentional cruelty, unlawful restraint, and risk of injury to a child. WFSB. In court, Carla entered a not guilty plea. CT Post. Nanita and Jacqueline did too. NBC Connecticut. The case is now headed to trial, but the pain is already raw. Court documents paint a harrowing picture. Carla told police that she and Nanita believed Mimi was bad. She didn't listen. She didn't respect them. The Independent. She allegedly described to them her daughter's behavior in disturbingly accusatory terms, as if Mimi's personality justified the abuse. The Independent. In one version, Carla claimed she thought Mimi's death came after a physical accident, saying Nanita stomped on her head after an argument, according to the warrant. The Independent. But when confronted with the autopsy, which found no head trauma, she changed her story. The Independent. Jacqueline, the aunt, told police she saw her niece restrained with zip ties on several occasions. The Hour. She claimed she witnessed Mimi curled up, weak, fading. She admitted to seeing the tote in the basement, the same one used later to transport Mimi's body. The Hour. She even told them Nanita loaded the container into his car and drove it away, on orders from Carla. One warrant described how Nanita allegedly tried to hide the container in a cemetery, buried, or at least abandoned, but couldn't find a suitable spot. The Hour. He then dumped it behind the vacant building on Clark Street, where police eventually discovered her remains. During their court appearances, the charges shocked the community. NBC Connecticut. The presiding judge set high bonds. Carla and Nanita were each held on $5 million bond. Jacqueline on $1 million. NBC Connecticut. Defense attorneys entered not guilty pleas for all 3. CT Post. Carla's defense argued she never intended to kill her daughter, that she was emotionally overwhelmed. CT Post. Nanita's lawyer similarly denied that his client was a murderer, claiming his role was exaggerated. CT Post. Jacqueline's defense balked at claims she was responsible for murder. They framed her involvement as gross negligence, not intent to kill. But prosecutors counter with the weight of the warrants: conspiracy, cover-up, deliberate concealment. They point to the zip ties, the starvation, the movement of the body, and the deception during the DCF wellness check. CT Insider. Investigators say they have more evidence: witness interviews, phone records, and forensic analysis. NBC Connecticut. The case is far from simple. When news broke, the local community was horrified. People in New Britain and Farmington expressed disbelief. How could a child die and remain missing, unreported, for months? CT Insider. How did a family hide her death so thoroughly? Critics of the child welfare system quickly sounded the alarm. Some advocates argue this case highlights a major gap in homeschooling oversight. If a child is pulled from the school system and taught at home, who ensures their well-being? The Independent. The plastic bin sat behind an empty house. No one would suspect its terrible secret. But when police finally opened it, the world changed. On October 8, 2025, someone driving by an abandoned building on Clark Street in New Britain, Connecticut, called the police. Something felt wrong. CT Insider. It was a gray, overcast afternoon. The kind when shadows cling to walls, when things look half buried in gloom. Officers responded. They crept through tall grass and weeds. Behind the boarded-up house, they saw a large plastic container, a 40-gallon tote. The hour, the lid was askew. Curiosity, fear, and something worse gripped them. They pried it open. Inside, shock. They found human remains. The air was thick with death. It hit them before they even saw the body. The smell, horrible, overpowering. What they didn't expect was who was inside. A young girl, severely malnourished, folded in the fetal position, wrapped in sheets and a comforter. CT post, long hair matted, small hands curled inward, a layer of decomposition, but not just decay. A life taken, hidden, forgotten. This was their entry point into a nightmare. When the body was formally examined, the office of the chief medical examiner moved quickly. The forensic pathologist, Dr. James Gill, issued a stark verdict: fatal child abuse with starvation. NBC Connecticut, the manner of death was ruled homicide. CT post. The report laid bare the cruelty. Mimi's weight was shockingly low, only 26 to 27 pounds, according to what police publicly released. NBC Connecticut, her limbs were skeletal. Her ribcage was sharp, brittle. Her face was gaunt. CT post. There were no major external injuries. No signs she had been beaten to death. CT Insider. That meant the killing came not from a punch or a weapon, but from prolonged, intentional starvation. Her body showed signs of malnourishment so severe that her skin seemed to cling to bone. CT post. Investigators also noted that the remains were coated in a white, powdery substance. The hour theories circulated. Was it used to mask smell? Were they trying to preserve her body? The chilling detail pointed to a deliberate, horrifying cover-up. Soon after the discovery, arrest warrants were executed. 3 people were taken into custody: Carla Garcia, Mimi's mother; Jonathan Jojo Nanita, her mother's former boyfriend; Jacqueline Garcia, Mimi's aunt. All 3 are charged in connection with her death. NBC Connecticut. Carla and Nanita face the gravest charges, including murder with special circumstances, child cruelty, conspiracy, unlawful restraint, and tampering with evidence. NBC. Jacqueline is charged with intentional cruelty, risk of injury to a minor, and restraint. The hour. At their first court appearance, Carla waived her probable cause hearing. NBC Connecticut. Nanita's attorney asked for time to review the charges. The courtroom was tense. The judge set their bail sky high. Carla and Nanita were each held on $5 million, Jacqueline on $1 million. NBC. Behind closed doors, investigators said they had what they needed: wildfire evidence, damning statements, and enough to begin unraveling the lie. Warrants read aloud in court uncovered fractures in the story of a good mother. The hour. In her interview with detectives, Carla admitted things she could never take back. She said she and Nanita withheld food from Mimi for about 2 weeks. CT Insider. She told police they deliberately stopped feeding her daughter. The hour. She said she zip-tied Mimi when the girl acted bad, a punishment she called discipline. CT Mirror. She told them Nanita once said Mimi had stopped breathing in her bed. CT Mirror. And she claimed he then carried her body to their basement, but she never went down there to see how he disposed of it. CT Insider. According to her, the smell became so strong in their home that they had to stay elsewhere: hotels, friends' places. CT Insider. She said Nanita later moved the tote, wrapped in comforters, to New Britain after they relocated, and dumped it behind that empty house. The hour. Her sister, Jacqueline, admitted she saw the zip ties. She remembered the little girl, gaunt, weak, fragile. The hour. She said she knew something was wrong, but didn't stop it. She claimed not to have pulled the trigger of this horror, but she watched the crime unfold. The hour. Why did Carla Garcia starve her child? The warrants revealed a deeply disturbing motive: emotional resentment. Yahoo/The Washington Post. In her own words, Carla admitted she felt rejected. According to court records, she told police she starved her daughter because she believed Mimi no longer wanted her. The Independent. She said she felt hurt, abandoned, invisible. So she retaliated in the worst way. Not with words, but with silence, deprivation, and control. Yahoo! That isn't all. Carla and Nanita are accused of lying to child welfare officials. CT Post. When the Department of Children and Families attempted a wellness check in January 2025, they held a video call with someone posing as Mimi, not Mimi herself. The Hour. The deception allowed them to evade scrutiny, hide the truth, and avoid detection. Advocates and lawmakers point to this as a stark failure of the system. How did the department not know the real Mimi wasn't there? How was the video check approved when the child on camera looked different? Washington Post. This has stirred deep public concern and urgent calls for reform. As the investigation continued, stories shifted. Nanita claimed he placed the tote in his car and drove it to a cemetery, intending to bury it, but couldn't find a spot. CT Mirror. He then abandoned it behind that boarded-up house on Clark Street. The Hour. Carla gave multiple versions of events. In one interview, she said Mimi died in her bed. CT Insider. But in another, she told detectives she wasn't present when her daughter's body was moved. CT Mirror. She said she didn't go downstairs to the basement where he kept the body. CT Mirror. Jacqueline spoke about the tote. She said she saw it many times. She allegedly took photos of her niece, zip-tied, frail, barely alive. The Hour. She told detectives she observed Mimi curled in a corner, starved and broken. The Hour. All three of them pointed at each other. Nanita said he panicked. Carla said she was overwhelmed. Jacqueline said she didn't know how to stop it. Every story was tangled, but together, they formed a picture of cruelty hidden behind carefully constructed lies. When the story broke, the community was rocked. A little girl starved to death, hidden in a bin like trash. CT Post. People couldn't believe it. Politicians and child welfare advocates immediately raised troubling questions. DCF's video check systems came under fire. Homeschooling oversight was questioned. How many families use homeschool to hide abuse? The Washington Post. Lawmakers are calling for stricter laws. Some suggest unannounced in-person checkups for homeschool children. Others demand a full review of how child protective services failed. The resentments, the neglect, the secrecy. This case exposed a system that let a child slip through the cracks. In news conferences, officials repeatedly said, "No child should suffer like this." The once hidden corpse was now a symbol of failed trust, of ignored warning signs, of a system that must do better. Mimi's father, who hadn't seen her in her final months, spoke quietly but with heartbreak. He said he last saw her when she graduated 5th grade, her bright, smiling face frozen in his mind. CT Post. He believed in her. The courtroom was silent, a silence so cold that it seemed to sit on everyone's shoulders like weight. No cameras, no gasps, no dramatic outbursts, just a room full of people who could not understand how a 12-year-old girl ended up starving to death in the United States of America. Jacqueline Mimi Torres-Garcia was gone. Her body had been found in a plastic bin, wrapped in sheets, hidden like evidence instead of a child. And now the legal system finally had its turn. But justice always comes late when the victim cannot speak. Investigators had worked for months. They spoke to neighbors, doctors, family, teachers who barely remembered the girl because they had rarely seen her at school. The medical examiner had painted the ugliest truth in one clinical sentence. This was not a medical condition. This was starvation. No food for at least 2 weeks before death. At 12 years old, her weight was that of a toddler. The prosecutor stood and read the charges with a voice that shook the air. Murder, child abuse, failure to provide medical care, concealing a body, endangering the welfare of a child. One of the jurors looked down, blinking fast, trying to keep themselves from crying. Another looked angry, jaw tight, fists balled. Because this wasn't just a case. This was a system failure. Community failure. A horror hidden in plain sight. When detectives questioned the mother, her story kept changing. First she said the girl was sick. Then she said she fell. Then she said she didn't know what happened. Finally, she admitted something darker. She had been struggling to control the child. She had restricted food as punishment. She insisted she didn't mean for her to die. Detectives were stunned. Punishment? What kind of punishment takes 2 weeks of food from a child? What kind of punishment leaves a 12-year-old weighing far below a healthy range? What kind of punishment ends with a child hidden in a laundry basket? The room went cold. Even the detectives who had seen everything felt the air shift. This was not a crime of rage. This was not a moment of insanity. This was slow, calculated, conscious, a series of decisions over days and weeks, a starvation that required someone to look at a hungry child and walk away. The medical examiner's report became the backbone of the case. It was clinical, precise, emotionless, but everyone who saw it felt something. There were no signs of cancer, no infection, no internal organ disease. There was only one cause: lack of food. The body had begun consuming itself. Muscle first, then fat, then organs. The kind of suffering no child should ever know. One detective later told reporters, "This wasn't a sudden tragedy. She was dying slowly in front of someone." The courtroom listened without breathing. Every word felt like a punch. Photos from the crime scene were shown only to the jury, but eyewitness accounts of jurors' reactions told the world enough. Some looked away, some tightened their lips, some cried. A 40-gallon plastic storage bin, a comforter, sheets, a trash bag, a child hidden like an object. The state did not need dramatic speeches. They had proof. The prosecutor held up the photo list and said, "This is not how a loved family member is treated. This is how someone hides something they know is wrong." The defense tried to argue mental stress, depression, overwhelmed parenting, lack of support. The courtroom wasn't convinced. Plenty of parents struggle. Plenty of parents feel lost. But they do not starve their children. Where were the systems meant to protect her? Teachers rarely saw her. Doctors hadn't checked on her. Neighbors knew very little. No mandated reporter had flagged a warning. No one had called authorities. There were no welfare checks, no caseworkers, no early intervention. She disappeared slowly, quietly, and no one realized until she was gone. The prosecutor hammered this point. She didn't just die. She slipped through the gaps we refused to close. Some jurors wiped tears. Others shook their heads in disbelief. There was guilt even among those who had never met her. Because someone should have seen her. Someone should have stopped this. To save the mother from a life sentence, the defense leaned on narrative. They described poverty, isolation, a household overwhelmed, a mother without resources, a life spiraling downward. They tried to paint the defendant as someone who broke, not someone who chose. But the prosecution stayed firm. They didn't deny the mother was struggling. They didn't deny her life had problems. What they denied was justification. Because the refrigerator had food. Investigators found it. The neighbors had eaten. Investigators confirmed it. The mother had eaten. The autopsy proved that too. Only the child starved. The prosecutor said, "This was not a tragedy of poverty. This was the deliberate withholding of food from one person in the home." The courtroom felt the truth hit like a hammer. The jury left to deliberate. They had hundreds of pages of documents, dozens of photographs, testimony from medical experts, detectives, child welfare specialists, and forensic analysts. They returned in less than a day. Everyone stood. The judge asked the question, "Has the jury reached a verdict?" The foreperson nodded. The courtroom froze. The verdicts were read in a quiet voice that carried across the room. Guilty, 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 guilty. On every count. There was no emotional outburst from the defendant. No cry, no scream, She simply stared ahead, almost detached, as if the sentence belonged to someone else. One juror dabbed at their eyes. Another looked down, unable to make eye contact with the defendant. Some courtroom spectators sobbed. Others clenched their teeth, because justice had come, but too late for the child who needed it. Before the judge sentenced her, the prosecution read a victim impact statement. Not from family, from the medical examiner. A chilling sentence. This child died in slow, preventable suffering. Silence returned. Even the defense couldn't argue with that. The judge finally spoke. The voice was steady, measured, but thick with emotion. The duty of a parent is to protect a child. You did not protect her. You caused her death. And you attempted to hide it. Somewhere in the room, someone sniffed hard to hold back tears. The judge continued, "This court has no power to undo the suffering she endured, but it does have the responsibility to ensure accountability." The sentence: life in prison, no chance of parole for decades. The mother stood still as the sheriff placed cuffs on her wrists. No reaction, no plea, no tears, just the same stillness that investigators had seen from the moment they interviewed her. Some wondered if reality had even registered. When the case files were unsealed, the public learned the rest. Investigators found locks on multiple doors, no recent signs of baths or medical care, a room that appeared and used for months, very little evidence that the child had eaten recently, no medical records for a long period, no school attendance. She had been isolated, removed from the world, made invisible. The final police report included a line that broke even the most stoic readers. Had medical treatment been sought even in the last 48 hours, she likely could have survived. 48 hours. 2 days. Help was possible. Healing was possible. But no one called. Across the country, the case sparked outrage. People demanded more school welfare checks, mandatory doctor visits, stricter home monitoring for isolated students, new requirements for child welfare red flags. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.